Last video, we talked about films without budgets, and how that leads to making projects with very minimal scopes and a deliberate play on film form. We talked about Andy Warhol's Empire, and how its simplicity as a film makes it comparable to a photograph. That's gonna be what this video is about. Movies that play with form in a way that lets us examine the line in between photography and cinematography. I compared Empire to a photograph because they pretty much function similarly. There's few information you get with a video like this versus a postcard of the Empire State Building. But as noted with the harsh audience experience at the screening, it's still a valuable difference. You can hear this difference from Empire fans as well. They talk about how the film form allowed them to feel the nature of time differently as a movie. Let's take a look at these films that blur the line between movies and photos. One of the movies that emphasize this line is Abbas Kiarostami's final film, 24 Frames, which shows, you guessed it, 24 frames. Each of them a photograph that Kiarostami took over his 40-year career. These images then were brought to life through different visual effects that create a moving image from a still one. It does feel like the same ingredients that made Empire, but this comes out being more of a treat, I think, due to having more diverse scenery, first and foremost. The landscapes we meditate on are lush and organically beautiful. There's definitely much more movement, which is created through digital manipulation. It even starts not with a photo, but with the painting Hunters in the Snow by Pieter Bruegel. I think it's a much more tender and melancholic reflection on the fragility of time, not to mention it being left unfinished for a while due to Kiarostami's timely passing. Let's move on to another way to play with this photo-movie relationship. I want to bring in Shift by Toshio Matsumoto. It's just one single photograph of some buildings, but it goes through a ton of manipulation in a different way. And that's through cutting up the image and sliding the segments across each other. It gets better and better as it progressively gets more playful with the idea. The introductory seconds were hypnotic and gives you a nice grasp of what it'll be working with, which lead to more enjoyment, I think. It's super cool when it gets to that point where you can't even tell the manufactured lines apart from the ones innate to the raw image, and then it generates even more lines on top. It's fun thinking about just the use of space here, especially when factoring in how it is all made for this specific point of view. Manipulation of time is an interesting thing here because the movement through the shifting image segments can be interpreted as movement from or movement to. There's no designated point A and point B, so it forms a constantly distorted passage of time. It really warps our perspective of reality in the photo. But maybe in that distortion, a newer, cinematic reality can be made. And since film is a medium that is loved because of its power to expose realities, I must bring up a film that I think does that in a very positive and creative way. Capitalism, Child Labor by Ken Jacobs. The scenes of this film are also made out of just a single photograph. And it's a photo of child laborers in a factory. The image flickers back and forth and gives focus to the faces of the photo. It's chaotic, but the photo being manipulated rapidly sets kind of a wavelength that your eyes adjust to meet and in turn creates a lot of depth in the image, reanimating the photograph somehow. The score offers a perpetual tension that really matches the film. It's constant dread. It feels like it's moving so much until you realize it's really not. I guess it's easy to tie that subject to the photograph, since child labor was a horrible reality that persisted for such a long time. Photographs and storytelling that humanized the children and portrayed the hazardous conditions really helped to nudge the public into finally listening to the workers' movement. Photographs have a significant role in our recollection of history. That's why documentaries about history take after Ken Burns' work and bring life to still images with subtle directed zooms. It apparently takes very little to make photographs cinematic. This used to be done with a rostrum camera, which films documents with bird's eye precision, but in our editing software today, it's aptly called the Ken Burns effect. We can also switch up the manipulation of a single image with just still images that are edited together. And now, we have Now by Santiago Alvarez. It's a collection of still images from 1965 that were taken from newsreels and morgues that covered the civil rights movement, with the inequality and police violence revealed without subtlety. It more than makes up for the lack of moving footage for the majority of its run by the use of some snappy editing to some great music. Quick cuts follow the rhythm, zooms bring the energy into points of focus, and it becomes not only a great proto-music video, but a fiery piece of protest art. While Very Nice by Arthur Lipset was constructed first as a collage of found sounds, and then afterwards paired with found photographs, through editing that matches that unhinged whirlwind of ideas, and it becomes a very dynamic sensory trip from all that. Well, what if we take away the manipulation of these photographs, as well as any flashy editing between the stills? No more splitting them up or even zooming into them, and no more quick or dynamic editing to piece them together. Can we still end up with a good cinematic experience from non-moving images? Well, despite being visually composed of only still photographs, La Jetée by Chris Marker is still regarded as one of the greatest films of all time. The photos look magnificent, and the story being narrated is always engaging. It's really easy to fall enamored by it, even with it being essentially a slideshow. Now, Wolkenschatten, or Cloud Shadow by Anya Dorniden and Juan David Gonzalez Monroy, is another film of still images, though there is something more hypnotic going on, with its fading transitions into each frame. The photos are less conventional than the sort of photojournalism thing going on in La Jetée. They're usually a combination of multiple photos on top of each other. The abstract nature and minimalism buttresses its narrated story about imagination, which is that magical thing that enables us to fill in the gaps with stories presented like this. So if you consider these movies, should you then also consider that PowerPoint presentation you watched in your classroom a movie? Well, if not, what happens if you slow down a movie? Every movie is just a series of photographs, shown back to back to back anyway. But is the same photo put in 24 frames a second still a movie? When a movie suddenly uses a freeze frame, does it stop being a movie and then just turns into photography for a while, before then continuing to be a movie afterwards? Even when a film lacks moving images, it can still feel like a film because it's edited together, and then that becomes a type of movement then. We could think of these invisible slices in between two frames as a cut that enables the illusion of movement for those two related images. But there is a different illusion in the movement of Edward Muybridge's Sally Gardiner at the Gallop with Death Grips' music video for I've Seen Footage. Both are dynamic in their own way, whether it be with continuity of the subject or simply by virtue of having multiple frames sequenced alongside each other. With the movies mentioned in this video, there's a noticeable change in the images, with either still photographs turning into other still photographs or being manipulated into changing. But what if there was a single shot of an unmoving object not being manipulated, even by the camera? Well, it would be boring as heck. It would be like watching paint drying by Charlie Shackleton. This movie is over 10 hours of a single unbroken shot of a freshly painted wall. Now, why would anyone watch this? Well, I know one reason would be because it's their job to watch it. I'm talking about the British Board of Film Classification, which used to be called the British Board of Film Censors. These are the guys tasked to censor films or outright ban them based on their moral judgments of it. It's basically illegal to have a film distributed in the UK without being BBFC certified. And this requirement also costs 101.5 euros per movie, and then an additional 7.9 euros per minute of your movie. If that sounds horrible to you, then you get why this film was made. It was made in admittedly petty protest, forcing the censors board to watch 10 hours of paint drying, and thus driving a lot of attention to the censorship system by doing this. So if the lack of movement isn't done in movies because it would make a movie really boring, then maybe we could be thinking about how boredom can be utilized. Now, would anyone like this movie? Well, it was crowdfunded by fans and earned up to 5,937 euros total, so a lot of people were on board with this. Since then, it's been able to rekindle a second life for movie fans on Letterboxd, ironically serving as a type of freedom wall. Since there's no way to post anything but reviews or lists on the site, people take to this movie's page and leave messages that are rarely ever about the movie itself. We see anything from account updates to ranting about personal struggles lately. It's pretty cool what came out of and led up to this film with a truly one-of-a-kind form. I guess it is still moving though. Literally, I mean. It's just hard to perceive the change. But the paint actually is drying. That counts, right? Hundreds of thousands of frames are passing by when you watch this, and even if it isn't as obvious as the transitions between the gallop of this horse, there is still a microscopic difference between those frames. It seems that the only real way to explore a lack of movement between images is to get rid of the images altogether. It sounds kinda crazy. I mean, we hear this all the time, right? Film is a visual medium. So of course in the next video, we're gonna have to put this to the test and examine films with barely any visual presence. And since it's an audio-visual medium, we'll do the inverse too, and take a look at some video work without the audio. Next up, we have movies without image and sound. See you all there.